Great rivers meet and mingle, the Po and the Ebre, the Rhone and the Arno, the Nile and the Tiber. The waters wash the shores of Asia, of Africa, of Europe. Europe's new master, Hitler, waxing bold in the limelight of his conquering armies, grants an audience to his Axis partner from the Mediterranean. Flourish and pomp are an integral part of such meetings. Between them, these two, Il Fiore and Il Duce, have arrogated to themselves the destiny of the old world, all its oceans, all its people. On the mountaintop headquarters in Berchtesgaden, called the Eagle's Nest, plans are formulated to conquer the Mediterranean. Colonel General Jodl, Hitler's personal chief of staff, urges reduction of Gibraltar and Suez. Seal off the inland sea and make it an Axis lake. The Italian Navy, deployed in 3 swift squadrons and manned by able crews, is a grave, powerful menace to the lifeline binding the British Commonwealth of Nations. A menace to the Allied world. Fleet guards the western Mediterranean at the outbreak of war. Famous for the speed of its cruisers and destroyers, the French sortie from their bases at Toulon, Algiers, and Oran. Their hopes are high, their faith as yet unshattered. Churchill warns the Allied world that the safety of Great Britain and the Empire is powerfully, though not decisively, affected by what happens to the French fleet. For the British, control of the Mediterranean rests literally on a rock, Gibraltar, guardian of the narrow strait that leads from the Atlantic into the sea which serves as a moat around Hitler's southern flank. Natural fortress, indestructible sentinel, Gibraltar was ceded to the British by the Spanish in 1713. What nature has provided, the British through the centuries have improved. The rock is encrusted with armament, is alive with soldiers. The Royal Navy faces the longest odds in all its history in the coming battle for the Mediterranean. If the rock goes, North Africa and the Near East go with it. His Royal Highness, the Duke of Gloucester, brother of the King, inspects the defenses. From Gibraltar, there is a 1,900-mile seaway, east to Suez, that must be kept open, that must be protected. flags of the free rally around the rock. The ships gather for passage to Egypt in the Near East. Some will go to Malta, England's mid-Mediterranean island fortress, so urgently desired by the Axis, so vital to the Allies. On these ships rests the fate of empires. As a convoy heads for Malta, the ship's officers face the harsh knowledge that the enemy is under, over, and on the sea route ahead. But officers and men remember the ancient words. It is upon the Navy, under the good providence of God, that the wealth, safety, and strength of the kingdom do chiefly depend. One of England's great decisions of the war is to strengthen her Mediterranean fleet while the British Isles are still in danger of German invasion. The Royal Navy, outnumbered and outgunned here, sweeps forth to clear the sea lane to Malta. Battleships like the King George V, manned by men to whom long odds are not a discouragement but a challenge, hold the Mediterranean open. Horsepower, 110,000. Speed, better than 30 knots. Yet the soul of the ship is not her machinery, but the spirit of the English sailors who manned her. From the days of sail to the time of the turbine, that spirit has remained unaltered. It destroyed the Spanish Armada, smashed Napoleon at Trafalgar. In World War II, this spirit permeates the fleet. It is more formidable to Britain's foes than armor plate and cannon. Wars are not won by guns alone. The words, the great words of the Royal Navy's traditional prayer, sustain the sailors in their peril. Eternal Lord God, who alone spreadest out the heavens and rulest the raging of the sea, who has compassed the waters with bounds until day and night come to an end, be pleased to receive into thy almighty and most gracious protection the persons of us, thy servants, and the fleet in which we serve. Aboard a British man-of-war, there are 5 mealtimes a day. Cocoa on the morning watch, breakfast, dinner, tea, and supper. The galleys of the King George V must feed a crew of 1,900 men. The captain assigns an officer to the mess deck to see if there are any complaints about the chow. Written in the King's regulations. A daily ration of 1/8 of a pint of rum shall be issued to every rating over the age of 20. Those who do not drink get 3d a day, called grog money instead. The rum is issued neat to petty officers. For the other ratings, it is mixed with 2 parts water. Officers must supply their own spirits. The ship is more than a machine of war. It is a community of men. Between the salvos and assaults, between the hours of work and sleep, far from the world of chaos, safe in the world of memory, is one constant dream. dream. And when peace and rest at length have come, all the day's long toil is past. Each heart is whispering, home, home at last. Home, home, sweet home. And that may be within the sound of Bow bells in teeming London, where the blitz rages and the bombs destroy. Nor around thee thy wife and sweet little ones come, all clamoring joyous to snatch the first kiss, transporting thy bosom with exquisite bliss. Suddenly, ominously, the mosaic of the Mediterranean changes pattern. June 1940. France falls. The Royal Navy is stripped of her ally and must guard the far-flung battle line alone. In the Atlantic, in the Channel, in the Mediterranean. The clouds of catastrophe gather, and the councils of despair urge that the Mediterranean be abandoned to the enemy. Navy knows no retreat, believing that he either fears his fate too much or his deserts are small, who dare not put it to the touch to win or lose it all. So for watch after watch, continuous, unbroken, undismayed, the Royal Navy carries on. Malta, island, fortress, naval base, landing field. Malta, the irremovable thorn in the soft underbelly of the Axis. Whichever way the aggressors turn in the Mediterranean, there stands Malta, a stumbling block in their path. But the tiny island, with its 275,000 people, must live from convoys that fight through. The enemy is only 60 miles away in Sicily. Whoever holds Malta controls the central Mediterranean, and the British hold on to it like a bulldog. The British and the Maltese themselves. From times unimaginably remote, the waves of history have washed over Malta. But the ordeals of the past hail before the present incessant threat of terror from the sky. The The enemy raids mount by fives and by tens, by dozens and by scores, by the hundreds. And still the Luftwaffe sends out more of its bombers to blast, to burn, to butcher Malta. 17 months, Malta lives through a nightmare of attack. The Maltese fight terror and hunger with inadequate means, but with unbreakable defiance. Proudly, the score is kept. Air raid number 1,774. But the Axis has its grim statistics, too. 1,129 enemy planes break against the island of Malta. And the people of Malta? 1,468 dead. The grand harbor of Malta becomes a shambles of rubble and twisted steel. Ships that survive the long, long voyage from England are smashed into useless hulks at journey's end. The bottom of Malta's harbor is littered with the skeletons of ships that died to keep the island alive. The waste and wreckage of war clutter mile upon mile of the ocean floor. A cemetery of the sea. Dead ships, dead sailors, dead hopes. But life goes on. Through endless ages, aggressors have battered at the gates of Malta, have had their hour, and disappeared. The Carthaginians came and vanished. Islam engulfed the island and ebbed away. The Goths came plundering and the Vandals raged. But history swallowed up both Goth and Vandal. The Maltese remain. In the hour of Malta's ordeal, King George VI pays a sailor's tribute to the island's allegiance to the Royal Navy. All the bells in all the churches ring, and all the people greet His Majesty. Here in the Mediterranean are the elements on which aggression shatters. The king, the people, the Royal Navy. Guadalcanal. Poured from some 100 factories, reaped from some 1,000 farms, spewed out in fantastic abundance by American labor and machines, the supplies for war are heaped upon an island base in the South Pacific. All the world knows its name, Guadalcanal. Springboard for attack, storehouse for victory. Yet in 1942, Guadalcanal was wild jungle. 90 uncharted miles of festering malaria and rainforest, bypassed for centuries by history, forgotten by man. But by June of 1942, the unpredictable forces of war began to link San Francisco in the United States with Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands. The 1st Marine Division embarks for the South Pacific. Destination, New Zealand. Mission, undetermined. Somewhere, on some unspecified battleground, sometime in the uncertain future, the untested Marines will clash with the tested soldiers of Japan. But first, the tedious ordeal of the convoy. Uneventful, interminable weeks at sea. Ocean lifeline to the South Pacific is the war's longest and the war's most tenuous. Stretching 6,540 miles from California to New Zealand, it ties Australia to the United States. Break this line, stop the ships, and Australasia and Asia will be forever Japanese. Across the world, from the islands of Japan, other convoys, other soldiers leave for the unknown and sail away to war. They too set a southerly course for islands with names unknown to the men who must fight and die on them. For them also, the routine of shipboard life, the placid prelude of carnage. After the conquest of Rabaul in the Bismarck Archipelago, the Japanese push down the Solomon Islands. The two opposing forces slowly converge. Early in July 1942, a lone American plane sets in motion a chain of events which will bring those forces together at a place which neither side has foreseen nor planned. On obscure Guadalcanal, air reconnaissance reveals the Japanese are building an airfield, which threatens the Allied supply line to Australia. What the plane has seen changes the course of the Pacific War. The Pentagon, Washington, seat of American war planning. The Joint Chiefs of Staff recast their global strategy to meet the new Japanese menace to the Allied positions in the South Pacific. Resources are slim, trained troops are lacking, but the Japanese can be permitted to go no further. Guadalcanal must be taken. Admiral King casts the die. New Zealand lies in the shadow of the Japanese advance. For the United States forces stationed there, little time remains to enjoy the cordial hospitality of a sincere ally. The Marines have their mission now, to launch the first offensive land action in the Pacific War. Under Generals Vandegrift and Rupertus, the 1st Division is ordered to Guadalcanal, ordered to seize the island and its airstrip. This means another convoy, but it is very different. This convoy, loaded and geared, sails for combat, sails for battle. August 7th, 1942. Exactly 8 months after Pearl Harbor, the United States of America takes the offensive against the Empire of Japan. For the first time, the American overture to assault preludes invasion of the islands across the Pacific. The theme of the future is played on the beaches of Guadalcanal. Has been given. Land the landing force. The day of hit and run in the Pacific is over. The hour of hit and stay has come. The first American amphibious operation in World War II is enacted like a dress rehearsal. Bombardment has driven the enemy off the beaches. The Marines walk ashore, into the island. Miles across the Sound, others land on Tulagi Island. Violently opposed by Japanese Marines, American Marines fight their way ashore. And in the air, the Japanese strike back swiftly, strike back hard. Bombers from Rabaul hit American transports before they can unload supplies vitally needed to sustain the landings. Damage to the transports at sea means near disaster to the Marines ashore. The shattered transports withdraw. Stripped of supplies, the Marines dare not waste a moment encountering their implacable, impersonal, hateful foe, the jungle. Now it begins. The toil and the terror that makes Guadalcanal not a name, but an emotion. The airstrip is taken the day after landing, and the Marines christen it Henderson Field to honor a fallen buddy. Their own gear destroyed, the engineers use Japanese equipment to prepare the field for the first American planes. The Japanese reacted sluggishly on the beach. They unleash full fury from the sky. Their own field now menaces their own flank. They go all out to destroy it first, planning to retake it later. Under the dark cover of night, the Japanese filter reinforcements ashore. Special landing troops, Imperial Marines, crack units. Their general has warned. This is the decisive battle between Japan and the United States. A battle on which the rise or fall of the Japanese Empire will depend. No troops are better fitted than these to master the jungle. Fearless, these men have been schooled in stealth and infiltration. They are experts in ambush and concealment. And the Americans? They meet savagery with savagery. They fight, and they fight, and they fight. in all the history of human slaughter. Few troops have ever endured such scourging as the Marines on Guadalcanal. The casualties mount from the fighting, from malaria, from dengue, from the rot and corruption of the jungle, which knows not mercy. Salute the rising sun. Throughout their empire, throughout newly conquered Southeast Asia, throughout the South Pacific, the Japanese pause out of respect for their symbol of national superiority. Theirs not to reason why. Theirs but to do and die. And die they will, and die they do in a series of the most terrible sea battles in history. Down from their island fortress to the north, Rabaul, comes the Imperial Japanese Navy with timetable regularity, the Tokyo Express. But sailors of the United States and Australian Navies sacrifice their blood for their brother Marines, who cannot hope to control Guadalcanal against an enemy who controls the surrounding seas. The Japanese come down the slot of water between the Solomon Islands and head for the sound called Iron Bottom, because it is strewn with the hulks of dead ships, the bones of dead sailors. The Battle of Savo Island, the Battle of the Eastern Solomons, the Battle of Cape Esperance, the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands, the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, the Battle of Tassaparanga, the Battle of Rennell Island. Nights of inhuman ordeal and defeat. Nights of more than human valor and victory. Guadalcanal is a running wound through which both sides bleed. A hemorrhage of naval strength, of men, of materiel. Far from the dying and destruction. Far from the sailors and Marines who fight and pray for victory and salvation. The United States of America organizes her land, her resources, her industry, her men to answer the distant prayers. In the greatest mobilization of strength ever known to the world, America prepares to rescue the world. And to the rescue, America marches. Guadalcanal, another march. A march of grim men, old young men. A march of men leaving purgatory. The 1st Marine Division is being relieved. What's left of it. And on a lonely grave at Lunga Point, there is a prediction about the Marine who lost his youth. That when he goes to heaven, to St. Peter he will tell. Another Marine reporting, sir. I've served my time in hell. Admiral Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief, Pacific Ocean areas, flies down from Pearl Harbor to pay what small tribute is within man's province. If there was horror and ferocity, there was also courage and self-sacrifice. If there was death, filth, and disease, the Marines turned the tide of war and stopped their enemy. The Japanese will advance no further. And as the surviving Marines wave goodbye, one of the greatest tales of heroism slips out of focus into history. To these men go the honors accorded the Greeks at Thermopylae, the colonials at Valley Forge, the British at Waterloo, and now, the Americans at Guadalcanal. And now, rings around Rabaul. The Japanese dominate the Pacific, and their Supreme War Council continues to execute sweeping plans to bring 700 million Asiatics under imperial control. Proud and confident after her shattering naval victories at the outbreak of war, Japan spills over her legitimate boundaries, pouring supplies and manpower into overseas bases to protect her new empire and defy the Allies.